Dave, you gotta get a better background, Dave.
I know. I'm fully aware.
You look like a serial killer or maybe a sociopath.
Yeah. Well, what can you do? I know. It's something I actually am a little embarrassed by, but we're going to work on it.
Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the Long Shot Podcast. I'm your host, Duncan Robinson, and I'm here virtually with my good friend and co-host, Davis Patrick Reed. Davis, how we doing?
Virtually. It's a shame. I'm okay, Dunk. It's downpouring snow here in Ann Arbor. And it takes me back to one of our earlier episodes where you talked about one of the greatest things of Miami was that you don't get chapped lips. And at the time, it was such a ridiculous claim that it was hard to even take it seriously. But I get it now. It's so cold and dry here and snows all the time that my knuckles are so dry. I don't know if you can see. It looks like I've just been punching a brick wall for the last 3 days. And it's a nightmare. I'm trying to do better with lotion, but it's getting to the point where it's slightly painful. So I'm okay. That's a long-winded way of me saying I'm okay.
This would be a great opportunity to plug a lotion that maybe supports the podcast. We don't have one of those right now, but maybe
no free shout outs.
for all you people out there, maybe we're looking for one now. It's actually funny, Dave, that you bring that up because now that I live in Miami, I realize that I'm actually, because my skin and my body is accustomed to being in the humidity, I'm actually more susceptible to chapped lips when I travel to colder climates. So I just got back from Toronto and my lips are chapped, fully. I don't know if you actually brought that up because you could visually see that my lips are chapped through the screen, but legitimately within 7 hours of landing in Toronto, I woke up. We had a back-to-back Boston, Toronto, and I woke up with chapped lips like clockwork, and it's just one of the many beauties of living in Florida, particularly Miami, is you just never have to worry about chapped lips.
Oh, I get it. It's a tragedy. It's a very uncomfortable thing to deal with too. And then you got the conspiracy theories that Chapstick actually has little glass shards in it, so it makes your lips more cut up, so you buy more. And then it's just it's a cyclical thing, and you can't get out of it unless you move to Miami. It's the only way to not have chapped lips. I
actually don't think that that's a conspiracy. I think that there's some cold hard facts in there. I think there are the lower tiers of chapstick for sure just make your chapped lips worse. You got to go
lower tiers of chapstick.
I'm not going to get into name calling, but I will shout out some people that are fighting the good fight in the chapped lips world. And that's, the Burt's Bees of the world. I have a really good brand. It's kind of like a no name. I honestly don't even know what it is. So I can't even give them the recognition they deserve, but it's those kind of off the main track brands that are really fighting the good fight because they're organic. They're using natural ingredients. It's kind of like the mom and pop owned version of chapstick. It's not the big players or the whales in the chapstick game, if you will.
Yeah, no, I get it. Fair enough. So like you said, you're in Toronto. Now you're in San Antonio. Before Toronto, you guys were in Boston. You've played 5 games in the last 7 days or something like that? You guys have been all over the place.
We had 4 and 5. We had a little back-to-back at home, a little Friday, Saturday. We went Clippers, Toronto. We had Sunday off after the back-to-back. And then on Sunday, we flew to Boston, which was great for me. Got an opportunity to see some family, catch up with some people near and dear to yours truly. And then we went Boston and then right on the plane to go to Toronto, which I will point out, Toronto is actually one of the most difficult back-to-backs in the league because you're coming into a new country. So you have to go through customs, which is a casually overlooked, kind of caveat of traveling to Toronto. Granted, we travel very luxuriously, so I'm not gonna, act like I'm all high brass and can't go through customs, but
come on now.
It does add another 45 minutes, maybe an hour, to the travel plans, which if you're planning on a back-to-back, those are, really important sleep opportunities that you're missing out on. So I will say that. But anyways, yeah, we had the back-to-back in the Northeast there. And then today, albeit Wednesday the 2nd, I believe, we hopped on a flight from Toronto to come down to San Antonio because we had this game scheduled earlier in the year, but it was delayed or postponed due to a COVID outbreak that we had. So now we're back in San Antonio, which is beautiful. Third time this year we're in San Antonio. We came for preseason. We came for the one that got postponed, and now we're back again.
How about that? You can never spend too much time in San Antonio. A couple follow-ups for you. You guys play in Boston. It's what, a 7 o'clock tip-off, 7:30 tip-off? So that game's over at 11 p.m., let's say?
That's probably more like 10. The game's over like 10:15.
But you're not out of there until what? You're not out of there until midnight?
Yeah, 11:30, 11:45.
And you're going straight to Toronto for a game the next night.
Yeah. Yeah, so we go straight, usually when it's a back-to-back, we try to be a little bit more punctual, when leaving. And, we just hop on the bus, team bus, head right to the plane. And, like I said, with Toronto, it's a little bit different, but just because of the customs. But it's actually not that bad of a flight. I feel like in general, the NBA tries to do a good job of, particularly with back-to-backs, scheduling them so it's not like you're taking a 3-hour flight in between. Sometimes we will because we'll have an away home back-to-back. And because Miami is a further destination for most, if we're up in Detroit or whatever, that's a 2.5 hour, 3-hour flight. I did see a back-to-back earlier this year, and I think this was off of a reschedule, but Brooklyn had a Sunday day game in Brooklyn, and then they had a Monday night game in Portland. So like those types of things, like that's an anomaly. Like normally the league wouldn't put you on a 3-4 hour flight, with a game the next day for a variety of reasons. The big one being safety, player welfare. It's probably not best for the bodies to be playing a game after a long flight like that.
Yeah. Makes sense. But so you're getting to the hotel at what, 2 a.m. and then you guys are up the next day. Do you, on back-to-backs, are you guys like skipping the morning walkthrough? Or are there things that you're taking out of your schedule so that guys can rest? Because playing 2 NBA games, I mean, you complain about your going through customs travel. And it's, most people have to go through security and TSA. And, there's a lot of steps before getting on the flight that you guys get to skip. But you do have to play back-to-back professional basketball games. So I understand that rest and recovery is at a higher importance than maybe the casual fan or citizen traveling.
Yeah, the second day of a back-to-back game day looks a little different. It does. And the big one being is we won't have shoot-arounds. On the second night of back-to-back, we'll have just a walkthrough in the hotel. So the schedule, assuming guys are going to sleep in a lot later than normal because exactly that. I mean, we've had back-to-backs in my, whatever it's been, 3-4 years in the NBA where we've gotten into cities at 4 a.m., 4:30. So, you think of it that way, you just try to get your 8 hours. I'm all about protecting the 8 hours. So you take 4:30 to maybe 11. I usually can't sleep past 11 in that sort of setting. And then maybe try to squeeze in a nap after a walkthrough before you head to the game. So it does kind of change, the day to day, or at least the routine, but it's part of being a good team and a deep team is being able to win those games, win back to backs. I mean, it's something that we talk about in terms of something we try to prioritize going into a season is, we want to be a team that's not just going to lay over, or lay down on the second night of a back to back, because there are teams that will, because they're hard. There's definitely challenges that come with it. But it's definitely something we, take pride in is in going out there and trying to compete on second nights of back to backs for sure.
Yeah, makes sense. Toronto's not a team you want to play on the second night of a back-to-back. Those guys just get after it.
Yeah, and in that setting, they also were on the second night of a back-to-back as well. So in a situation like that, there's definitely no excuses. It was actually funny when we were flying into Toronto. We saw their plane kind of like pulling up as we were like on the bus at like 2:30 a.m. And because they're in the cold, they have people that start their cars for them. So they get there and there's snow on their cars or whatever. So like all their cars were on and like ready to go. It was kind of like that, what movie is it? Anchorman, where like they like meet in that back alley and it's like all the different news. It's like all the different news teams. It like almost had like that type of vibe where we were all like coming together on this random tarmac 20 minutes outside of downtown Toronto. We should just squared off right there, you know?
It also takes me to Succession, getting on the, you know, pulling up in the cars, deciding which jet's going first. That's good stuff. Logan and Kendall fighting over which jet takes off first. It's a power play. It's a power play. Are you guys racing? Do you want to be the first off the plane or the second off the plane in that scenario?
First off, you know, because then you're maximizing your hours of sleep, and then all of a sudden you're getting a competitive advantage. You know, it's like even if it doesn't really materialize in that way, it's a mental competitive advantage. Like we got here first, we're going to be more rested for the game tomorrow. I get it. Well, here's the thing. That way.
If you're second off the plane, though, you get to watch the Toronto guys get into their car, and then you start to get a scouting report on who's driving what. You know, did someone's car not get started in time? Are they upset about it? I just think there's some mental warfare you can start to battle with there.
Or if maybe somebody's moving a little gingerly after the game that night, you know what I mean? Like maybe somebody's not at 100%. Maybe you get an early tip on who's going to be available the next night. These are all things that I hadn't really considered until now. So I appreciate you being thorough in your process over there. It really means a lot. Dave, I got to tell you something, man. This week was a special one for me, for a variety of reasons, but one of the main ones being that I had a chance to meet somebody that I truly idolize. And, you know, it's not many times that I'm like, and I'm not saying this as like some sort of humble brag, because it's really not that, but like, the only time that I've ever truly been like kind of starstruck was when I met Michael Jordan when I was in college. And I had another one of those this week, and it was a special moment. I shared it with you briefly after it happened, but, I had the opportunity to meet j.cole, one of my favorite artists, rappers, musicians. He was courtside at one of our games, and, I know you're a big fan of his as well. And it was just a special interaction, and I wanted to share it not only with you, but I'm bragging about it a little bit. I wanted to share it also in a public forum as well.
While could not be more glad that you brought this up, because there's a lot I have to ask you about, because we haven't talked about this in depth. I appreciate that you're willing to share it with the world now, but it's one of those things we're trying to get you to share more on Instagram. You know, I know it's like pulling teeth for you, but if we're not sharing a picture of you meeting j.cole pregame, like what are we doing? You know, it's like you guys beat the Knicks, you played well, we met j.cole. It's just like, if that's not the most prime opportunity to share that with the world, but at least you're doing it now. So I have to ask, when does that interaction happen? I see a picture of you guys pregame, dap up. Are you leaving layup lines to go say hi to j.cole? Is that okay? Is someone upset with you about that?
So this one was a long time coming. First off, I want to respond to your Instagram comment. So I did post a picture on Instagram this week, a personal picture, not an advertisement. I know that's a big distinction for me, but I did post a picture, and I actually used a j.cole lyric, and I tagged j.cole in hopes that he would, since we had now, you know, met in person, the hope was that there would be some sort of social media follow up. Now, was it a little bit wishful thinking? Yeah, it was, absolutely. Did I think maybe I was going to get maybe honestly, but it didn't come from a desperate place. See, I think that what would have been desperate is if I had posted a picture, me with him, like we're like boys or something. You know what I mean? Then that's like, that's fair. You know, then now I'm like trying to create this curated perspective of like, you know, j.cole and I FaceTime every other night. Like that's not what I wanted to do. Like it was more so like I wanted to pay homage to somebody who has been a guiding light in my career. And he truly is. And I don't even say that like facetiously. Like I mean it wholeheartedly when like I used to listen to the warm up, Friday Night Lights, you know, when I was like in high school, like shooting in the gym, like late at night by myself. Like that was like the soundtrack to my life in many ways. But anyways, that's a little bit of a tangent. Anyways, so take us back to the summer, or not quite the summer. This was right before the start of the season. You actually were in Miami for a j.cole concert, and I was trying to facilitate the opportunity to meet him. Now there was still some kind of COVID worries, whatever it was, so I didn't have the chance to. So then
no.
forward.
Hold on. That's not the full story. Here's what actually happened, or at least here's what I was told, is that j.cole was performing in Miami. We had an opportunity to go meet him. We thought you were trying to coordinate a way that we could go say hi before the show, because we were going to the show.
Yes. And I think what it was is that we were, as the Miami Heat or FTX Arena, whenever performers come to the arena, they're gifted something, from the arena. Like there's some sort of gift that's given to them. And I was going to be the person who gave the gift because I requested to be, mind you. I was like, I'd love to meet j.cole. And the guy was like, oh yeah, well, what we can do is we can set it up so like you're the one giving the gift. So it doesn't just look like you're a fanboy. I was like, honestly, that sounds like
you're not getting that call to be the guy. You're not the first guy in line. No,
I'm not getting a nod for that one. But anyways, continue your story.
So yes, you were offered the opportunity to gift him the FTX, American Airlines, whatever it was at the time, gift. You asked if I could come along with you. They said no, because of COVID protocols. Only one, they could not have no guests. So what you did was...
What did I say? What did I say, Dave? What did I say?
You said, if everybody's not eating, I don't want a part of it. And you turned it down, which, Duncan, you're an amazing friend for that. The intention is great, but it was like, now I feel guilty. For the rest of my life, I would have felt guilty if you had not met j.cole last week. It's like, what if you had never met him? What if you turned down the opportunity? You would never met him. And it's purely because I couldn't go with you. It's like, okay, good friend move, but also now you're putting the guilt on me. It's like, that's something I had to carry.
But here's the beauty in the story, Dave. I did meet him, and we had. Well, and you
know what's funny? You know what's funny, Dunk, is I remember you said at the time, which was kind of you don't flex often, but I remember you said at the time, you were like, Dave, I'm going to meet him. Like, we'll have another opportunity.
100%. And honestly, what happened, I think probably what happened was prior to the game, I think we played the Knicks on a Wednesday. So Tuesday, he was coming to the gym to work out and get shots up. Some guys do that. They just want to like shoot around, whatever, play pickup with their boys, whatever it is. So the arena, whatever it is, provides some availability for those guys to come in. So Caleb Martin, teammate of mine, obviously from North Carolina, actually has a friendship with j.cole. So I was talking to Caleb. I was like, he was going to stick around and shoot. And this was after practice. I had like a treatment appointment I had to get to. So I was like, you know what? I'd love to stick around. But once again, like, it's not really my place. Like, you guys are friends. Like, I don't want to just kind of be like standing there like, oh, what's up, man? Like, dap them up and then just like watch like that. That felt weird. It felt forced. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pass up on that opportunity as well. I feel like it's going to happen in a more organic setting. So anyways, fast forward the following night, we're playing the Knicks. We go out for layup lines. j.cole he's sitting right next to the end of one of our lines, like on the right side, across from our bench. And, I got to imagine Caleb said something, but maybe he didn't. Honestly, I don't know. And I was just sitting there.
If he didn't. Let's say he did.
I was like trying. I wasn't making eye contact with him or anything. And he goes, Duncan, Rob, what's good? And I look over. I'm like, what's up, man? And I was like so taken back. I was like, why is he addressing me right now? So I just like went up and tapped him up. I was like, man, like, what's up, my guy? Like, I'm a huge fan, been a fan for a minute. And he was like, hey man, I'm a fan of you. Let me tell you, I'm a fan of you. And that was like, damn, that was crazy. That was like a crazy moment to have for me, to hear him reciprocate the appreciation. Obviously not to the same level, because legitimately I've been a fan of his for the longest. But anyways, after the game, I had to do like a quick like radio media thing, and he was out by the floor. So at that point I had to take the advantage of the opportunity to dap him up again. I went over, I was like, hey man, appreciate you coming, blah, blah. We chopped it up for a little bit. And then he had his viral moment with Tyler, which, naturally would go viral. And mine would just kind of be like a forgotten memory that I'll always have and hold on to. But nonetheless, I mean, it was a long-winded story, but man, what a special moment it was to meet j.cole.
No, it's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing. I do think it's funny that there's a million crispy, clear pictures of him and Tyler, and there's one like blurry one of the two of you, even though you had two interactions. I think that's maybe just something that, we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I've experienced that in so many different ways, the Tyler Herro thing, even today, because when we go through customs in Toronto, we actually have to go through like the normal part of the airport to board our plane because we have to go through like normal customs. And two different people in the maybe, 200-foot span where we're walking through the normal terminal come up to me and take a picture and go, Herro, and try to take a picture with me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not Tyler, but I'll take a picture with you. Like, sure, you're probably going to want to delete this later, but you can go tell your friends you took a picture with Tyler Herro. So yeah, I mean, it hasn't slowed down at all. If anything, with how he's played this year, it's just taken off even more. And, when I'm wearing like a hat or a mask, you're really just banking on the complexion. Like that's the only thing you're 100%. Really going off of. Like we're both tall. He probably dresses significantly better than I do. So there's another distinction that you could probably make. But, I don't necessarily fault people, but I do get the Herro mix up still quite a bit.
Do you know if you Google white guy on Miami Heat, it just comes up with Tyler's profile?
I mean, yeah, that makes, that's just like, it's just simple mathematics. It's like an algorithm. You know what I mean? It's like it's like statistically, who are people looking for when they search white guy on the Heat? It's not Duncan Robinson. It's Tyler Herro.
I don't know. It's gonna be. I don't know. There's got to be somebody out there who searches that when they see a 5'5" starting lineup. You're the only white guy out there. I think it's very natural that someone would Google white guy on the Miami Heat. And then they would think you're Tyler. And then maybe they see you in the airport after Googling that, seeing the name pop up, and then they think you are Tyler Herro actually in the flesh.
Yeah, I suppose it's possible. I mean, honestly, I don't dislike, being in the shadows. It's a perfectly fine place to be. And not to mention, he deserves the notoriety. The guy's playing at all-star level. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this podcast, he has been acknowledged as an all-star.
Right.
We have those selections coming up here. I think it's Thursday, right? That they're doing the reserves. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Tomorrow. Which it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out. But anyways, all in all, fantastic week. Had the opportunity to meet j.cole.
Speaking of you living in notoriety, what are the chances that j.cole doesn't know your last name? And Duncan Robb was all he could remember. Robertson, Robinson, Robbie.
I considered that a possibility. I absolutely did. I prefer to live in a world where he knows my full name. It is more of a nickname, and him and I are now on nickname basis. That's the world that I'm choosing to live in. Also, if you're still listening at this point and you're realizing that Davis and I are just kind of going back and forth on just a whole bunch of random stuff, I think this is an opportunity for some transparency to our listeners in that we had a fantastic guest lined up for you this week. It was going to be a fun one, and it still is going to be a fun one. But given the recent kind of hectic schedule that I have tied in with the hectic schedule of said guest who will not be named, it fell through. And that's just the world that we're living in these days. People
nature of the beast.
Yeah, people are busy. I'm pretty busy. Davis is kind of busy.
Not at all.
Yeah, honestly, Davis has absolutely no excuse. If Davis ever has to cancel because he claims to be busy, that's when he's gotten too big for his britches. He's just gotten too big time. But yeah, we had a guest and it fell through. So you're just gonna listen to us this week. Just fired up. And honestly, we got some good stuff we want to talk about. Obviously some basketball stuff and just some absolutely random stuff like Canadian customs and meeting j.cole.
Sure. Chapstick,
of course. Anything else on your mind over there, Dave? What do we got?
No, but I am curious with the j.cole thing. So you meet him before the game. We can move off of j.cole after this, but this is not specific to j.cole. You meet him before the game and then he's sitting foot on wood for the next 48 minutes. Yeah. Does that impact your game at all? Like, there's got to be a little extra motivation. Like, I just met j.cole and then you go for 25. There has to be some correlation there of just boost. You obviously don't give me the every game I'm going to give it my all. There has to be.
I'm not going to give you that.
Just an added ounce.
Honestly, I wish I could say that there is, and I'm not going to give you a meaty answer. There are some games where you feel it and you just kind of have that like kind of juice, that little extra whatever. And maybe it was the j.cole thing. I don't necessarily think that it was. But then there are other games that you kind of have to get up for a little bit more. That's just the human nature, the human condition side, to when you're going to play 82 games in a year. Not every single game you're going to feel like, this is game 7 of the NBA finals. So will I say that there was maybe a tiny little added something? Yes, but I felt the same thing for the Lakers game. I felt the same thing for the Hawks game the time before. Honestly, I felt the same thing for the Celtics game the other day. It's just like you don't always know how you're going to feel going into a game, and obviously you do everything you can from a preparation and rest perspective of trying to get your body right and get in the right mental space. But honestly, as funny as it sounds, sometimes that stuff is just simply outside of your control. I mean, I imagine you probably experience it to some degree as well. Some weeks you're fired up and ready to go and just ready to crush a recording. And other times it's like, you're moving in quicksand.
100%. 100%. And it was that way when I was looking at Excel spreadsheets too. Sometimes I was really looking forward to crunching the numbers. Sometimes it all just got blurry and I didn't know what I was looking at. It just happens. It happens, I think, across all professions. Do you recognize fans during games, like guys sitting courtside? Because I know you, like in Miami, you guys have Shaq sitting courtside, or you have DJ Khaled. You guys are in Toronto and Drake's courtside. Are there, like, I know you're locked in on the game, but is there a free throw or a timeout or a moment where you look over and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool?
You occasionally will acknowledge, like in those kind of dead moments, legitimately never, like I couldn't even tell you a time during the game where I've actually like actively acknowledged somebody like in a game. By the way, there's also a picture of me dapping up DJ Khaled after the Lakers game. So we'll be sure to push that one out there as well. Come on. Which, by the way, I don't know if you saw what he did for that game. So he had these like super rare Jordans, I think, that he was wearing. I honestly didn't know that they were. I think PJ or somebody had told me that they were like this really rare Jordan, and he actually brought a little pillow to put his feet on, so his feet wouldn't be touching the ground. It was like a satin matching pillow that matched up with his Jordans, and he was sitting courtside right next to our bench. And I was like, looked over like during one of the timeouts. I was like, is that a pillow underneath his feet? And somebody made a comment of like, yeah, it's like some really rare Jordans. So he's like trying not to like, I don't know, have them touch the ground, which is like, I guess he was maybe carried, or I don't know. There's pictures of it floating around.
Carry him out of the gym.
I don't know. Just an absolutely preposterous move. But he had his son there as well. And his son was, I think, in like a matching Louis V like jumpsuit or whatever it was. I was just like, God, that kid is going to be so cool when he gets older. Like, wow, that's awesome.
Or scarred. The kid's probably walking out of the gym while DJ Khaled's getting pushed in like a scooter. Pushed in a stroller so his Jordans don't hit the ground.
When you got it to that level, though, like that's a move that you just have to respect. You're just showing up to courtside seats with pillows under your feet. That's just a new tier. You're creating a whole new tier just for yourself. It's really, really special stuff. And DJ Khaled's doing it. You got to tip your cap to the guy.
I don't know. The verdict's still out on whether I respect that or am almost embarrassed by it.
What, do we have anything? Should we get to the question of the week here? Or do you have anything?
I want your take on Tom Brady retiring, because I know you're a Boston guy, Patriots through and through. I've heard the whole Tom Brady spiel before. So I just want your reaction.
Well, I'll start by saying thank you. In some of my more formative years, it's safe to say that Tom Brady was a staple of influence, and somebody who really in many ways molded me. I'm saying this like kind of joking, but like growing up in New England, Patriots football it's a certain form of religion. Like it really is. Like the dedication to football Sundays, just knows no bounds. And I was as dialed in as anybody. I remember when they lost to the Giants, I didn't go to school the next day. I'm not proud to admit that, but it happened. You know, I was in shambles. I refused to get out of my bed. I was that dedicated, which now, like looking back, I think as a kid, it's okay. But like sometimes I also look at like, and I'm not taking shots at anybody, but like sometimes I look at like adults now that like have that level of passion, and I'm like, wow, like I'm thankful I grew out of that. Anyways, that's neither here nor there.
Like, hey, but you need something else to hold on to, buddy.
Anyways, I'm not going to get into that because I do love when fans are like passionate. And I think we've talked about this before, but like, that's one of the most special things about sports is that like, I think everybody kind of collectively acknowledges that in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter, but it does really matter still at the same time. That's a sentiment that I completely stole from Hassan Minhaj when he was on our show, but nonetheless, I think it's a really good one. In terms of Tom retiring, go ahead. What do you got?
I agree, Dunk, but at the same time, there is a difference between caring about the Patriots and Tom Brady and having like posters on your wall that you know, give a tap to before you go to bed. You know, like there's a line there somewhere that I think once you become a grown adult, it starts to become a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, okay, fair. But when I was a kid, I had posters of like a bunch of basketball players, like football players, everything, like Tiger Woods. Like I had everything up in my room. I don't know not that we need to get into a psychoanalysis of what my childhood room looked like, but, anyways,
I would actually love to know.
I mean, Tom was, the ultimate competitor. I mean, I think somebody broke it down for me the other day, and I think this alone is just incredible that you could make an argument. You could split his career up into 3 different sections and it would be worthy of 3 different Hall of Fame careers. Like each little section would be worthy of its own Hall of Fame recognition. And I think the longevity, one of the things that I always loved that he would say is like, when I go against you on Sundays, you better be ready to commit your entire life to winning in the game of football because I know that I have. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to beat me. That level of just like savagery, like I think it's funny because especially in his like, you know, when he was 40 or 44 or whatever, you see him moving around. He's, you know, not the most mobile guy, but like, I also love the clips of him like getting up in, Honey Badger, whatever his name, Tyrann Mathieu' face and like talking shit and like doing all like, he's still an absolute savage, which is just like that level of competition sustained over that stretch of time, is just incredible. Like it really is. And I think it's like everyone collectively acknowledges him as the greatest. I was a little disappointed that Patriots fans didn't get too much love in his kind of like goodbye Instagram, but I also understand it. I think there was some animosity, left there. And I think he also kind of picked up some of the pieces after the fact and did, you know, give the thank yous where they were due. But, anyways, it's a sad day it's a happy and sad day for the sport of football because, you know, you celebrate a career, but also you're losing a competitor.
Did you feel personally attacked by not getting a Patriots mention? Are the posters coming down in your bedroom?
Well, the posters have been down in my bedroom for quite a while. I'm pretty sure my mom has transitioned my childhood room into basically it looks like a hotel room. You know, it's kind of like a pseudo Airbnb bed and breakfast type of thing.
No, the Duncan Robinson, Tim Duncan David Robinson, it's done?
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's gone.
It's tragic.
That was a legendary poster. I had and fitting now that we're in San Antonio right now, but I had a Duncan Robinson, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, poster of them back to back. So it said Duncan Robinson in my room. It was great stuff. But yeah, no, I honestly did not feel any, like at that point, Tom, like do whatever you got to do, man. Give your thank yous where you feel that they're necessary. I think it was kind of like bullshit, honestly, that Schefter or whoever it was, kind of stole his thunder anyways by kind of breaking the news cycle of his retirement. I think he, if anything, deserved to have that moment be his own and not have it be leaked in the way that it was. So with that being said, like do whatever you got to do.
It is an interesting conversation, like the role of, and we've talked about this a little bit, Woj and Shams in the NBA and how they are the truth tellers. Like they are first to the news. If they tweet it, it's pretty much fact. And they always know before anybody else. And so it's a case of that. It's like, yeah, Tom Brady, I'm sure, wanted to control that narrative, release that information on his own time, on his own schedule, which is why he immediately came out after and was like, well, no final decision has been made, when clearly it had. Schefter got the early scoop on it. But Dunk, we learned this the hard way. In the summer,
Thanks.
We were under the impression that the long shot was going to be able to break the free agency news, that it was going to be our tweet that told the world you were coming back to Miami, and Woj was going to repurpose our tweet. But what happened as soon as it hit 2:00? It hit 2:00. I had the tweet.
3 p.m. I think.
I'm looking at my phone, Dunk. I have Twitter up. I have the tweet typed out. At 2:00, I'm getting ready to hit send. And what do I see? A notification that Woj has tweeted. Duncan Robinson, co-host of At the Long Shot Pod, has signed so credit to him. He did still give us our shout out, which was legendary stuff. But that tweet was supposed to come from me, Duncan. You know what happened? I was 5 seconds late. And it's a dog eat dog world out there in the world of breaking sports news. 5 seconds was enough.
And everything is time stamped, so you know who's first. But like the naivete of us two to think that we were going to be able to like surpass Woj in gaining information. And mind you, it was my own information, but even still, it doesn't matter. Right. Like these are media whales. They're media conglomerates. Woj and Shams they're bigger than any individual, as crazy as that sounds. But yeah, I mean, I think there's beauty in that, because it's like the fact that those people can exist shows that there's such a market for it, that people like love that, like breaking news and the news cycles and, free agency and the trades and all that sort of stuff. But there is also something like Tom Brady should have that moment. Like he should be able, if anything, he should be able to go out on his own terms, to the point where like I actually thought, and I obviously don't have this type of information, but if he could possibly, maybe we could utilize the Michigan connection, get him on the pod, we can pick his brain. But like this idea of like him coming back just to spite Adam Schefter, like you're not going to take my moment. I'm coming back for another year just because you said that. Like I could see a world where he would do that. I think that would be incredible. And then also like Schefter's just looking like a clown because he reports something that seemingly was not true. But whatever. All in all, I'm just happy that the guy has clearly got his flowers. There's been a ton of Brady love, deservedly so, over this last week or so.
Yeah, I've seen enough Tom Brady stuff. I'm done with it. Okay. Question of the week. This comes from Discord. This comes from Chad on Discord. Shout out Chad.
Oh dear.
Chad. They ask, is there a commonly taught shooting technique that is just wrong? Like beef or being squared up or something else? What is beef?
Beef is bend, elevate, extend, finish, I believe is beef.
Wow.
I mean, that might have been my own little version of it. I mean, I'll say this. I think beef, being squared to the basket are both incredibly like antiquated, and are just not overall accurate, or I should say all encompassing. Like some people might shoot that way and it might be effective for them. But I think, I think I've spoken about this before, but I think the biggest thing when it comes to shooting is that you have to find something that's comfortable for you, and not everybody is anatomically made the same way or can move the same way. So what is comfortable for me, whereas maybe my elbow might be more tucked in, that might be really bothersome for somebody. And they might think there's no way I can get to the ball to the rim this way. Now, what it is you can find little ways to kind of tweak and change that, right? So like one thing that I always get asked about is having your elbow under the ball. And I actually teach it where instead of being square to the rim, you actually, if you're a righty and you're looking at the hoop, you almost want to tilt your shoulders to the left. So it's almost like you're throwing darts with that right hand, because that's just going to free your elbow, because all your elbow and arm are just levers, and you want to give them, the maximum, ability to kind of move and find, freedom without restriction. So I think the beef in being square to the rim, like, line your toe up with the rim and line your other foot up, a half a foot behind your other one, like all that stuff, and trying to put every single individual into a box of how to shoot, I think is really kind of comes down to being counterproductive. I think there are a lot of people out there that are starting to kind of realize this. And what I think people have found, and people who really look into this stuff, is that there are certain commonalities between all shooters that really shoot at a high level. And there are certain things that every guy does. And it's not necessarily about how it looks, but it's more so about, making sure that the shot is repeatable and simple in that way, or, you have a finish and a follow through that's snapped at the end, or like there are certain motions, that might look a little bit different, but a lot of the kind of like the kind of meat and potatoes of the jumper is actually, there is a lot of carryover there. So I think that in terms of like teaching shooting, like the old, like hold the pizza, shoot it up is actually like pretty out of date. I think it's good for like teaching like beginners, because it kind of gives them somewhat of a framework and structure to kind of just latch onto early on. But as you get up to a higher level, I think if you're still relying on beef, you're probably not going to be too successful. Is my own 2 cents. Granted, I don't write the book on shooting. Somebody more qualified should and probably does, but that's just my take.
I mean, you're fairly qualified. Here's a question. When you shoot free throws, do you put your foot on the nail? Like, do you line your toe up on the nail?
So I used to. That's an interesting one. I used to line my toe up on the nail, but then, a shooting coach of mine, Rob Fodor, the shooting guy on Instagram. Honestly, you should follow his stuff, if you're, want to become a better shooting, because he does really unique drills and really has a good grasp over, what it is he's doing. And actually the other guy, Mike Dunn, is kind of like a protege of Rob Fodor and the shooting guy. And Mike Dunn does a lot of the stuff that a lot of the drills that Rob teaches. And Rob's been a shooting coach with the Heat for a long time. And him and I work really closely together, and he does some really, really creative stuff. So originally I'd always put my toe on the nail when shooting free throws. And he had a really interesting thought. He goes, well, you don't shoot, the ball doesn't line up exactly with your toe. So why don't, instead of lining your toe up, why don't you line up where the ball will be right at the nail, thus giving you, just a straight shot, to the rim every single time. So I actually position my right foot a little bit to the right of the nail to then in turn line the ball up, with the nail. So I'm shooting a straight shot every time. But like, it's just little stuff like that, like, stuff that, and you might be a 85% free throw shooter, 88% free throw shooter with your toe on the nail. Like, for much of my career, that's always what I've done. And I've never like struggled to make free throws. But even those little things, those little tweaks, when you're able to like get little victories within the margins, those can make a really big difference.
Yeah. Makes sense. I put my toe on the nail, just if you were curious. And,
I was, but honestly, Dave, you've gotten some slander for your jumper. I've always thought you have a pretty good looking jump shot.
Thank you.
Other people seem to disagree. JJ Redick, I believe, recently called it a push shot, which is pretty demeaning. Yeah. Basically, saying that you're not capable or strong enough to get the ball to the rim, is basically what that comes across as, that you got to just kind of heave it up there. But I play a lot of basketball with you. I've always seen you shoot at a high level. So I always say, different strokes for different folks, whatever fits, just let it fly.
88%, believe I still hold the record at Olathe Northwest High School for free throw shooting in a career. So, hey JJ, I'm not pushing those free throws, buddy.
Take
Actually, I was.
That.
I really don't take any offense to that because I think we talked to him about this. I am not strong enough to get an NBA 3 to the rim anymore. After like 10 attempts, everything just starts hurting. So yeah, it was a push shot. All right. I'm also not a professional basketball player. It's interesting though. That's actually an idea of shooting that I think is, not necessarily, I guess, antiquated or kind of like misunderstood, that like in order to shoot from deeper, you need more legs. Like it's not necessarily that you like bend your knees more. Like wherever you're shooting, you should have an athletic base, but like shooting deeper isn't necessarily about like jumping higher or you like having more of an aggressive jump or whatever it is, or like loading your legs deeper. It's more about how efficiently you're able to move the ball. So like one thing for me, when I'm moving further away from the rim, one thing I always think about is instead of, shooting with more legs, keeping the ball actually closer to your body, because that's going to allow you to generate more force upwards, which is ultimately going to get the ball to the rim, easier, more effortless. That's how you find those quote unquote effortless jumpers where it just looks like, so smooth and clean. And some people say like, oh, well, that's just natural. But no, I think like anything, you can develop an effortless jump shot. It's something that can be worked at and crafted, like any skill. And I really believe that. So there's another thing of shooting the further you get away from the rim, the more legs you need. No, it's actually the closer you should keep the ball to your body and the earlier you should let it go. If you're pulling the ball over your head, holding it and then trying to fire it at the rim, you're stopping the ball. Instead, you want to think about moving the ball in one direction, keeping the energy of the pull from wherever the ball starts and just letting it fly. And less about like, oh, I got to bend more and, shoot with more, all that sort of stuff. Like shooting with more arc will happen naturally when you do those other things. It's a byproduct of the process. It's not necessarily what you should aim for. Cause if you just try to shoot with more arc, then all of a sudden you're changing your mechanics and heaving and doing all this crazy stuff, just to get more arc. That's really good stuff. That's beautiful. You've said a couple of times on this podcast. It's all about repetition. You find what's comfortable, you rep it out until it's second nature, and you fire away. All right, you want to hit a long thoughts, and then we can get out of here. Yeah, let's do it. What do we got? I got a good one for you this week, because I think this is an important question in life. This comes from Thomas. And he starts it off with apologizing because this is a basketball related question. But Thomas, I actually disagree. I think this is something that can be related to everything. He's asking about the balance between being humble and being confident and how you toe that line. He tells a story about how he's playing basketball. He's with a new team, and he's struggling a bit with his confidence. He says, I want to believe that nobody can stop me on the court, but I don't want to get caught up with that and forget the real reason I can be unstoppable, the work and effort that I put in. I think the same question applies. Okay, so he is admitting that it is not just sports. He says, I think the same question applies, for example, when studying for an exam. You might be willing to put in the hours of study, but if you're not sure if the subject is too difficult for you, your study method, or not sure if your study method is the right one. So he apologizes for the email being too long. No, we love it. I skipped a lot of it. I apologize. But Dunk, he's asking, how do you toe this line? How do you toe this line of remaining humble, remaining with the mindset that you got to put the work in, but at the same time, understanding that you have put that work in and being confident in that work? It's a great question. And I want to start off by saying that my answer to this is just going to be a collection of me stealing other people's ideas and drawing inspiration from others. So very little of this is, some of it's come from my own realization that I've learned over time. I've learned what has been kind of my truth, I guess, if you will. But ultimately I've kind of gotten to this point because I've listened to other people. One thing that is mine is hold on. You don't need to apologize for that. That's how you learn things. True. You're not supposed to figure things out on your own. You take advice from others and then you apply it to your life and what makes sense. I appreciate you cutting me some slack on that. I'll start by saying this. For me, I think it's important to acknowledge where you derive your confidence from. So for me personally, where I derive my confidence from is
my work ethic and knowing that I'm prepared for an opportunity and knowing that I've earned an opportunity. Now, whether or not that opportunity happens or not, oftentimes is outside of my control. In some cases, it can be, if you continue to show up. But the importance from the confidence standpoint is knowing that I've checked the boxes that I've needed to check. Now, where the humble side comes in is also understanding that there are a whole lot of things outside of my control that likely needed to happen for this to come together the way that it has. And I think that it's important, and I took this one from J.J. Redick, and I love it, is I've always tried to have this mindset of never arrived, always becoming. And I heard him say that. I heard him say it to the Duke basketball team on like a YouTube clip. I think when I was in like college or maybe high school. And I fell in love with it the first time I heard it because it's absolutely true. And so many times, and it's kind of this perfect balance of answering this question, because so many times in my career, I've had these little moments and they happen in little spurts, right? Where you feel like, oh, wow, like this is all coming together. And you might think, oh, wow, I've arrived, right? And then all of a sudden you're very quickly humbled because the game of basketball has an incredible way of doing so, into realizing that no, actually you haven't arrived. There's still so much more that you need to accomplish. And on top of that, there's still so many people that are like gunning for the position that you're at. Like you should never function in this moment of being comfortable. As kind of like nerve wracking and anxiety filled as that can be, that's also kind of like the beauty of what makes competing, at a high level. And it doesn't have to be basketball. It could be anything, but, and the other side of it too is like anytime you feel like you've arrived, that's when you kind of tend to let your guard down a little bit and find that comfort. And that's when you're more susceptible to that kind of slippage. But I think that it comes down to that mix of like knowing where your confidence comes from. And it comes from different places for different people. And I truly believe that. Like mine just has always come from knowing that I'm prepared, but then also understanding that just because you've done all that you can doesn't guarantee anything. And it doesn't mean that anything, is owed to you, because quite frankly, it isn't. And that people have done as much as you and more than you and not been afforded the opportunities that you've had. So I think like constantly trying to just remind yourself and can have that perspective, is where you're kind of able to toe that line between being really confident that you're ready and earning an opportunity, but then also kind of knowing the kind of like fleeting feeling that a moment can have, and that it can all be like gone really quickly. Wow. What do you got, Dave? Give me something. Give me a break. Give me some of you've been through some adversity and had to perform on some big stages yourself. So what do you got?
Well, so I have this opposite problem of never really feeling that confident. I think I'm always afraid of being humbled. But you're right. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add, to be honest with you. I think you broke that down beautifully. Confidence comes from the work. I think that there's an analogy I heard that a boat at sea drifts without direction, Dunk. I think that was the analogy. Even with an anchor, if you drop an anchor, that boat's it's gonna be moving, it's gonna be drifting. But as soon as it has a direction and it's on a course, it can stay on that course. And the analogy was being used to talk about how if you're putting in the work, you have a direction, the boat's gonna go. The boat's going to go in the direction you need it to go. So I think the confidence comes from putting in the work, like you said. And we talked about this a little bit in our last long thoughts of dealing with anxiety and performance anxiety, and making a list, checking things off, doing the work that you need to do. That's where your confidence comes from. But just like you said, with all of those things taken care of, there's still so much that's out of your control. And that's I think where that anxiety can come in, is like, there's things that can throw off that work. Even if you put in all the work, there are things that can throw you off from that goal. So I think just like you explained, you put in the work, that's where your confidence comes from. But you have to have an understanding and an appreciation for there are still these things that are out of my control that could throw things off a little bit. So all I'm going to do is build this confidence from the work that I'm putting in and then let the chips fall where they may.
I love it. That's poetic. And I appreciate but I appreciate the question too. I love the turn that the long shot has taken into a very introspective, podcast. One where we, try to take a peek inside the deeper layers. There's so much surface level journalism done these days. We've talked about the narratives and sure. The different forms of media that are clickbaity and all that sort of stuff. It's refreshing to kind of get into the deeper, heavier stuff. Cause that's where the difference is. I really believe that.
Yeah. That's where you really get things going,
Yeah, exactly. You get uncomfortable. You get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Sure.
Anyways, do you got anything else for us, Dave, or what do we got?
I got nothing.
All right. Well, I know we said this last week, but I am very optimistic that we're going to have a guest next week. And if we don't, you know what? We'll just be back for, some more introspective talk. But no, all jokes aside, I really do think we appreciate you guys tuning in regardless. But feedback is always welcome. But we're looking forward to having a guest on next week and looking forward to another week of the long shot. But appreciate you guys as always tuning in, and we'll talk to you on the flip side.